This is the little pumpkin bag from Fabazine number 9, and you're going to be doing the same thing with the inside and the outside of this. So I'll just show you the inside and then we'll kind of bring it together when we get the outside as well. So first step is to create the kind of bag shape. And to do this, we are going to need to fold this piece in half. And I'm just going to crease it on either end, and what that will do is kind of mark it without actually having to put a mark on it. And then I'm going to do the same but lengthways on the side pieces as well. Again, just a little crease in the bottom, and we're going to line that up with that crease there. And let me just grab a pin, pop that in place. And we'll do the same on the other side. Now we'll do one side at a time because I need to show you how this comes together. Now what we're going to do is line this up so it's dead straight along both edges, and then where this line, the seam allowance line, comes up here, we're actually going to need to put a little snip into the fabric. Let me just see if I can mark it on here so you can see. A little snip here, and then the same on that other side. So fold that up and mark it there, because we're going to have to put snips in the seam allowance of the outer piece of fabric here and here. And this is because when we come up to there, we are going to turn it. So let's get that little snip in, and we'll pin it all the way up to there, and then we'll turn that corner and we'll come up the other side. And that little snip in the fabric there is what's going to allow you to move that fabric round and be able to sew it. Now when I stitch these, I don't tend to start at one side and go all the way around. What I will tend to do is start in the middle. So I would start sewing here and then do one side and then go back to the middle and sew the other side. I find you just get a much more even result on it. So let me just snip into there, pin that one in place, and right to that very corner and come diagonally across, and then that will allow me the space to move it round and come up the other side. So we'll again get all that pinned. I shall whip this across the machine, and then we will have our first side of the bag. Once that side's in, repeat for the other side, and then do exactly the same process for the outer as well, which means you will end up with what we've got here. So a little kind of basket shape with two what would be kind of long ears on there as well. So I'm going to get both of those together, and then we'll have a look at putting the elastic in so we can create that ruching on the top of it to close the bag up a bit. So the two pieces are together now, and I've just put the lining inside the outer and starting to actually finish constructing the bag. So what I've done is I've lined up these two pieces, and it's quite important because these are shaped that you actually pop pins in all of the places that are going to need to meet. So for example, I would first of all line up the peak of that part of the pumpkin there in the centre and pop a pin through, then come along and do that bit where it goes all the way in and pop one in there, and then go all the way along, matching up those kind of the highest points and the lowest points all the way along, and do that for both sides. Now we're going to have to put the elastic in. So ordinarily with a bag I would sew the whole lot together, so all around these kind of leaf bits as well, but because we're going to be putting elastic in here and gathering these sections together, I'm actually just going to sew this piece first. You can come kind of up past the where all the panels join, because that's going to make it a little bit easier for you later on. So I would probably come up and maybe an inch or so onto where the leaf panels are, and just make sure you can get your hand all the way in, because we're going to have to add that elastic in a minute to create the gathers on the front and the back of here. So I'm going to go ahead and sew both of these edges so we've got something solid to work with, and then we'll come back to put the elastic in. So the front and the back edge have been sewn together now, and what we're going to do is add the elastic. So I'm just temporarily going to switch this right side out because we're going to need to sandwich the elastic between these two layers, and it's always better to do this from the front so you can see where you're going and so you can see what the finished result is going to look like. So we're going to pull it all through. Where's his other ears gone? And then we're going to pop the inside, we just pull the rest of that through. There we are, and then pull those through that side. Right, so now we're right way out, that's a bit better, and then we're going to pop the lining inside like so. So we're going to need some elastic here and some elastic between these layers on the back as well. So first thing I would advise you do is press this out so it sits nice and flat, and you're also going to want to snip into those curves to make sure that it's all sitting exactly as it should. You definitely want to press this first because you want to see what your kind of real finished result is going to be, and this is where we're going to add in the elastic. Now this is more than we need because you're going to stretch it as you sew, which will then allow it to gather in. So you need an end that you can hang on to as you're stitching. So once you've got it all kind of pressed and the right way out with all the little kind of bumps on the top, you're actually going to pin this in between those two layers. You want to do one side at a time for this. You're going to pin it in between those two layers, quite close to the edge where it joins the leaf there. Now you might need to put a safety pin or something on it just to make sure that you can kind of easily grasp hold of that other edge. And then we're going to stretch it right to the other side, and then we're going to pin it on that side as well. And hold that in place. Then with both sides there, we're going to stretch it across the span of the fabric and then kind of move it up, manipulate it into place, and then put an extra couple of pins in to hold position so it's got a nice even gather when it shrinks back up. Once you've got all those pins in, you're going to take it to the machine and stitch it in place. Now I would advise using a colour that's going to match in with the orange background. I'm going to use black so you can see where I've been, but you're going to repeat this process for front and back. So pin one side, stretch it out, pin the other side, manipulate it, and this is why we've left these open, so you can get in and move it around to where you need it to be. Make sure you stretch it and then pop another couple of pins in. Oops, that was nearly my finger. There you go, one there, and then again let's just manipulate it up above that eye. Just make sure it doesn't twist while you're doing this, and then pop another pin in there to get the last one. So you're going to do this front and back and then stitch this together, and what that will do is once it's all together it'll add that little gather along the top there, which helps to close up your bag. So I'll go ahead and stitch the elastic in and I'll come back to you. Now you want to stitch that elastic in with ideally a 3-stage zigzag, and that's why you're going to need a coordinating thread so you make that stitch a little bit more invisible. Now as I'm sewing this, I'm making sure that I keep that elastic tight and the fabric on the front and the back nice and flat as it passes under the machine, using a 3-stage zigzag, or this is a slightly decorative kind of wavy stitch, but it'll do the same job. Anything that's going to get lots of points of contact between the fabric and the elastic is what you'll need for this. And then just coming up towards the end here, just want to stretch that elastic out a little bit more to get rid of that little tuck. And then I'm going to stop when I get to that join. So now the elastic's been added and we've got that extra bit of kind of pull on the front, what we now need to do is turn the bag back the wrong way out and and then we will be able to add those final bits where we're going to stitch up, effectively, let's call them ears on both sides here. So let's get that all the way out, and then get all those leaf parts through to the right side. So I've got one on the right side, one on the wrong side there. There we go. Perfect. So now we've got those, we're going to pin them together all the way up, and you should have a match point on there, which is where the orange matches the yellow lining, and then they should match up perfectly. So we're going to go from there all the way around one side, stop, and then come back to the other and repeat the process all the way around there. Now I did leave a hole in the lining, and that's going to allow me to turn the whole thing right side out when we're done. While you've got it this way out, those excess pieces of elastic that we had, because we've kind of used those to get a grip and pull everything tight, they can be snipped away now, and then we are good to go. So I'll sew these back together and then we'll come and show you the final finished project. So this is the pumpkin bag almost finished. You can see there's the elastic in there, and the last thing you need to do is just top stitch around these outer edges and also around the outer edges of the leaves as well. And what will happen is, when you have done all your lovely trick-or-treating and you've got all those treats, you can tie it up so the leaves become the handles, and you've got a lovely little bag. So I'll finish this off, I'll put the top stitching on and then pop some pictures at the end of the video of the finished product.